Hey paisanos, I'm nervous, and here we are at the start of another year. 2023 has been packed, and once again, I haven't had a chance to play all of the games that I wanted to. Still, I do like to take stock of each year and highlight the stuff that really spoke to me. I wanted to have this one out before the end of the year, but a little monkey wrench got thrown into the works. I got COVID. Thank you, Justina. Anyway, I'm doing okay. It's played havoc on my sinus cavity, but I think I've had it relatively easy compared to any of my pals who caught it way back in 2020. Um, the real killer has been the brain fog. It's been tough to concentrate on just about anything. The Laddie flow test says I've still got it, and my gravelly voice probably gives it away as well. But I'm on the mend, slowly but surely. Well, we're here now, so let's get on with things. But first, let's get real.
The Nervous Worst of the Year Bonanza 2023.
You were expecting me to dish on some bad games, weren't you? Well, guess what, Shorty? There are no bad games. 2023 has been undeniably a really terrible year for the industry. Over 10,000 people lost their jobs, be it from sudden studio closures, restructuring, downsizing, and redundancy. I'm particularly horrified by multi-million-dollar corporate entities like Embracer and Epic, who have spent the last 18 months buying up studios willy-nilly just to unceremoniously shutter them or sell them off. Bungie laid off dozens with insufficient severance as their CEOs continued to rake in bonuses. Free Radical Design was shuttered just weeks before Christmas. Similarly, Hasbro eliminated hundreds of jobs at Wizards of the Coast in mid-December, despite Baldur's Gate 3 proving to be a banner year for Dungeons & Dragons. What Epic has done to Mediatonic and Bandcamp in particular really breaks my heart. Epic should have stuck to ZZT. It's all been downhill since then. Despite bad business decisions, many of these corporations continue to make record-breaking profits year after year. The executives in charge of supposed losses stay in their comfortable jobs when the workers who actually make the games we love happen find their positions ever more precarious, if not outright stripped from under them. I don't even think the 10,000 jobs I mentioned includes the people in the games press. I'm thrilled to see independent outlets like Remap Radio and Aftermath pop up, and if you do care about games media, please consider supporting them. But dozens more excellent writers weren't in a position to land on their feet, and many will leave games media for greener, more stable pastures, and I really can't blame them for that. Complicit in this is the Game Awards. Influential, powerful, and profoundly uninteresting, Jeff Luden's fan Keeley's big end-of-year bash is an award show in name only. In actuality, a 3-hour sizzle reel of commercials. Naturally, the industry's dire situation went wholly unremarked upon. I caught the start of the show this year and saw that the supposed lesser awards were being given out very quickly during the half-hour pre-show, sandwiched between game trailers from publishers who couldn't afford a spot during the full show. This really emphasized to me how little this ceremony actually cares about what it purports to be doing. And later, as Larian accepted their Game of the Year award for Baldur's Gate 3, they were asked to wrap it up as studio head Sven Vinke paid his respects to members of the team who'd passed away before the game's release.
We lost quite a few people also, so we want to dedicate this to all people we lost, and especially to Jim, our lead cinematic artist, who passed away in the last month.
It's gross, it's anti-creator, anti-art, and anti-people, and it frustrates me just how big this cynical pageant has become. Jeff Keighley is a coward and a charlatan, and since I'm not actually in the games industry, I can say this. I hope one day he takes a long, hard look in the mirror. Oh, and AI. Get it out of here. Sorry to be a downer. Labor issues are near and dear to my heart, and it's important that we think about where our media comes from and what challenges face the people who bring them to us. But with that addressed, let's have some fun.
Honorable mentions.
I'd like to formally acknowledge some games I really like that didn't quite make my list this year. If my game of the year was game I played the most of, that would be Trails to Azure and its 120-hour duration. And hey, I really liked it. I was jonesing for the conclusion to the Special Support Sections saga after wrapping up Trails from Zero last autumn, and Trails to Azure did not disappoint. The city-state of Crossbell finally asserts its independence in a bid to become its own autonomous country, but with changes comes complications. Both the Erebonian Empire and the Republic of Calvard, whom Crossbell sits between, have their interests in ensuring the state stays firmly under their joint control. Worse still, a family of bankers have installed themselves as the first family, proving that the more things change, the more they stay the same. I am always interested in a highly localized conflict where I can get it. The thing is, with all Trails games, Azure would have benefited greatly from a deft editor. The final dungeon in particular felt endless, with a parade of bosses, cutscenes, exposition, and dungeon hallways to crawl through. I appreciate the game was keen to wrap up its loose ends, but I got some real fatigue for the last dozen or even 24 hours. After wrapping up Azure, I jumped back in to finish Trails of Cold Steel 4 in an attempt to get ready for Trails into Reverie.
You see she's got cat ears? Well, you can put cat ears on her cat ears.
You know what? I'm not sure if I like this series anymore. Please feel free to tell me off if I'm still here belly aching about Trails Through Daybreak in a year's time. Cold Steel aside, I really enjoyed the Crossbell games, and if this is the de facto end of the trail for me, Azure would be a satisfying capstone for my journey. Armored Core is back for the first time in over a decade, and it's here with aplomb. I never thought I'd see the day when Armored Core was popular enough for London's double-decker buses to wrap themselves in full chassis promotional art, but here we are, and it deserves the acclaim. Everything about Fires of Rubicon, from its presentation and tight gameplay to its excellent script and story, are an absolute joy for the mecha pervert. I really want this one to be on my list, but the learning curve is mighty steep. My past experiences with Armored Core have been brief and hostile, and while Fires of Rubicon is vastly more beginner-friendly, I don't feel equipped to give this a full assessment until I'm at least able to defeat that belt guy.
The waves are intensifying. Raven, get clear. I'm sorry, Raven.
I need to be fully awake and in control of my faculties to even attempt to play this one, and that's a big ask for a sleepy boy. I'd also like to shout out A Space for the Unbound, Amnesia the Bunker, Anonymous Code, Legend of Nayuta, Riglorn Saga, and Street Fighter VI, games which I've started and I really dig, but I've barely cracked the surface on. There's also about a zillion games I haven't had a chance to even look at, including, but not limited to, Baldur's Gate 3, Chants of Sennaar, Darkest Dungeon 2, Demon Lord Reincarnation, El Paso Elsewhere, Fuga 2, Hi-Fi Rush, The Legend of Zelda The Tears of Opa Opa, Seasons of Letter to the Future, Slay the Princess, Void Stranger, and that new WarioWare game. I'm also super interested in Loop 8, the latest from Yuri Shibamura of Gun Parade March and Elemental Gearbolt fame. It's received absolutely scathing reviews, so you know I have to see that one. Maybe we can talk more about some of these games later this year. I'd like that. Okay, enough loafing around. I guess we better talk about the official Nervous Game of the Year 2023 list. The following 10 games aren't in any particular order, except for my definitive Game of the Year, which we'll finish on.
Star Ocean the Squeakquel, R.
Although 2023 has seen no lack of exciting new games released, I have found myself seeking comfort in the familiar. And I've been well served for it. Romancing Saga Minstrel Song got an HD remaster at the tail end of 2022. Wild Arms 1 and 2 came to PS5 with trophy support. and the unlikely release of Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 for Switch has allowed me to reacquaint myself with an old favorite and have a little prequel to look forward to. But one remake really stood out to me. Star Ocean: The Second Story R. The one mainline Star Ocean game missing in action from modern platforms and digital storefronts. I would have settled for a straight-up port of the PS1 game, but Gemdrops and Square Enix have gone above and beyond with a remake that has all of the joy of the original, with a fresh coat of paint and the kinks ironed out. The thing that Star Ocean 2 got, that the rest of the series promptly forgot, is that there's no greater pleasure than hammering the circle button in battle to watch that little guy go. The folks in charge of Second Story R recognize this, and while there's a few touch-ups and additional verbs at your disposal, you can really watch your little guy go. There's plenty of quality of life features like fast travel from anywhere and an annotated map that allows you to keep track of the game's numerous side quests and private actions, even denoting the ones that are time-sensitive. One may argue that this takes some of the mystery away, but this is a 25-year-old game we're talking about. I don't want to miss out on an optional character just because I didn't backtrack several towns with no indication there was any reason to. There's also a handful of added story scenes, though these only have Japanese voice acting. The English dub reuses the PSP recordings, so you'll get less voice dialogue. And the Japanese voice direction is head and shoulders above the English anyway, so I'd recommend playing with the Japanese if you like that kind of thing. They've also added fishing, a favorite minigame of mine anytime it shows up, and it is suitably ridiculous. You can fish in any body of water, and I do mean any. Here I am catching a shrimp in a bird bath, and here I am fishing in a castle's water feature. Second Story R is an absolute labor of love, and one that I encourage any console RPG enthusiast to check out. Familiarity with the series or the original game need not apply. This one is a real treat. On the topic of remakes,
Resident Evil 4 Remake.
I had my misgivings about Resident Evil 4. Still held up as one of the greatest video games of all time, giving RE4 the same treatment as its 32-bit predecessors struck me as a little unnecessary. But hey, Resident Evil has been killing it since the soft reboot in 2017, and this remake is also excellent. Indeed, OG RE4, as fondly remembered as it is, shows its age a little bit in terms of mechanics and controls in Year of Our Lord 2023, and this update provides a smooth and satisfying experience for returning fans and newcomers both. The game drops hints towards an RE5 remake, and if that ends up happening, I think we're really heading into Capcom silly season.
I just had an extreme makeover!
If any Resident Evil game really deserves this treatment, it's Code Veronica.
Chris, oh little fishy, come see my hook.
But whatever, good game. Thrilled to see this series regularly kill it again and again.
Dredge.
I have seen a lot of discourse this year bemoaning cozy games from a number of people who I usually agree with, particularly a fear that a trend towards coziness is encroaching on the landscape to its detriment. I'm a little bewildered by this. I cannot envision a world in which cozy ever goes beyond a niche status to overtake AAA bombast, even if games like Dave the Diver are stealing indie valor and getting away with it. Cozy, or even wholesome as a moniker, may be a cynical marketing move, but mostly I see a broad variety of games that people want to make couched under this umbrella, either due to the presence of non-violent verbs, cute graphics, or a general chill demeanor. Like many genre labels, it's becoming increasingly meaningless, with titles like Stardew Valley, Frog Detective, and Unpacking misguidedly collapsed into a monogenre despite having almost nothing in common with each other. Star Ocean Second Story R has proven to be a comfort game for me this year. Does that make it a cozy game? Who's making these rules? When does it end? What's the deal with kids today? My back hurts. Dredge is a game which I have seen caught in the cozy crossfire. A narrative fishing adventure that sees you take to the seas in a dilapidated tug to haul up increasingly gross Lovecraftian monstrosities. As far as horror games go, it's undeniably a chill time. more meditative than action-packed, the stakes aren't particularly high, and the loop of fishing, repairing your boat, and resting at night to restore sanity is a satisfying one. Perfect for when your brain or hands can't handle anything too frenetic. It's short and sweet, and I really enjoyed slowly playing it over the course of a few months as part of my evening wind-down ritual, disquieting atmosphere and all. Whether or not this is for you is entirely subjective, but I don't see the Dredge-like becoming the next dominant trend in the gaming landscape. I don't know, man. The world of games is so broad and ever-expanding now that you can safely ignore this one and still never run out of things to play before you die, so why get your bowels in an uproar? Anyway, Dredge. Good stuff. Hey. Did you guys know that slavery is bad?
Final Fantasy XVI.
Well, if you didn't, Final Fantasy is back to set you straight. In a world in which those with magical abilities are subjugated, we join Clive, a minor noble who falls from grace into involuntary servitude after political intrigue sees his family's duchy annexed by the neighboring Empire of Sanbreque. Joined by love interest Jill, loyal doggo Torgal, and the ever-charismatic Cid, Clive and his allies mount a rebellion to set the world to rights by vanquishing the Mother Crystals, the source of the world's magic. FF16 has proven to be a controversial title. Former Devil May Cry designer Suzuki Ryota stepped in as the game's combat director, shifting gameplay away from the series' console RPG roots further towards character action. There's a distinct similarity between Clive's and Dante's movesets, and much less emphasis on stats. Indeed, gamers got heated online debating whether stats actually mattered at all. Weirdly, I actually found Final Fantasy XVI to be comparable to Asura's Wrath. Both games feature frenetic combat encounters punctuated by bombastic QTE-heavy boss battles. Although arguably lacking in depth, the goofy spectacle's pretty enjoyable if you take it at face value. There is also something of a racism controversy, kicked off late in development by Bonehead Yoshi P stating, quote, "Ultimately, we felt that while incorporating ethnic diversity into Valisthea was important, an over-incorporation into this single corner of a much larger world could end up causing a violation of those narrative boundaries we originally set for ourselves. The story we are telling is a fantasy, yes, but it is also rooted in reality." I don't really know what he means by this, and it seems like a bit of a cop-out, but it's one that I'd expect from Japan's biggest RPG franchise. I think the real surprise is that Yoshi P said anything at all. If anything, maybe it's a bit of a mercy that Final Fantasy XVI doesn't attempt to tackle diversity. Whoa, wait, no, hear me out. I'm not confident that we wouldn't see cutscenes of Clive and his Wonderbread friends being subjugated by persons of color in a ham-fisted and stomach-churning take on racism. But maybe I'm being too pessimistic, and I'd really love to be proven wrong. I hope whatever Final Fantasy does next is more diverse and inclusive. Like many of the opinionated fans you'll see throughout the World Wide Web, Final Fantasy XVI wasn't entirely what I was looking for in a console RPG, but I still really enjoyed it. The series has always been a shapeshifter, and I'm always delighted to see how it will change. For more traditional JRPGs, I'm still well served elsewhere, so it's okay.
Like a Dragon, Ishin.
The long-awaited period piece spin-off of Like a Dragon sees Kiryu and pals transposed to Japan's late Bakumatsu era, just before the Meiji Restoration, a time of great flux. This is a story of class struggle. Kiryu's likeness portrays historical political activist Sakamoto Ryoma, masquerading as Shinsengumi captain Saito Hajime, in an effort to subvert and destroy the Tokugawa shogunate's rigid caste system. Let's be clear, in real life these two are absolutely not the same guy, so don't expect anything resembling actual history here. Instead, just come along for Like a Dragon's usual, absurdly intricate dramatic soap opera. There's still plenty of the series' trademark wackiness to be found, with the usual goofy side quests and even goofier minigames, replete with an old-timey performance of Baka Mitai, featuring a stirring shakuhachi solo. 19th century Don Quixote here is an incredibly funny in-joke. I found the combat a little weaker than some of the series' most recent titles, which is honestly to be expected from a remaster of a 2014 PS3 game. Ryoma has 4 fighting styles to choose from: Brawler, Swordsman, Gunman, and Wild Dancer. I may have been doing something wrong, but Swordsman always seemed like the most viable choice, and honestly most appropriate for the story's samurai drama. But that made the other styles feel a little extraneous, as if they'd been included somewhat carelessly, out of a sense of obligation. I rarely deviated from the katana, though I did get a lot of use out of the agile Wild Dancer during the game's climax, where it was essential crowd control against a veritable army of jerks. Ishin is a death of the old, birth of the new story, as characters shed their old lives and Japan enters the Meiji era. Everybody, and I do mean everybody, has a dual, sometimes triple identity. It's pretty stupid, but also pretty fun. Ryoma finally gets some solid bros in the game's back half, and seeing the camaraderie between them adds a lot to the story. Characters from across the series fill the roles of friends and enemies alike, as if putting on an elaborate stage production, an updated take on what Kunio-kun and friends did way back in Downtown Special, Kunio-kun's historical period drama. While not the highest of the series highs, Ishin will see you battle a fleet of mustachioed British naval officers, led by a backflipping arms merchant. I challenge you to tell me what's not delightful about that.
Octopath Traveler 2.
Octopath Traveler, herald of Squeenix's loose HD 2D series and its gorgeous diorama-esque environments. Ultimately, I wanted to like the first game a lot more than I did. As much as I adored its aesthetics, they were layered over a grindy slog with story beats too few and far between. Not so with Octopath 2, a sequel that learned a lot from its predecessor to deliver a friendlier, livelier, and much more compelling experience. Set in an early modern industrial revolution, 8 protagonists once again intersect across the globe, pursuing their own personal ends while partnering with each other to get the job done. Some are absolute ne'er-do-wells. Inquisitor Temenos is an immoral priest keen to inflict pain with little interest in upholding the church he supposedly serves, but is also a keen detective with numerous crime scenes to investigate across his storyline. My favorite is Throne, the reluctant thief/assassin seeking to free herself from the secret society who holds her chains. And who could forget dear sweet Partitio, the cowboy merchant with a charming southern drawl who thinks responsible capitalism can dismantle the master's house. Alright. Ultimately, many of our heroes are wanted individuals, tortured by unfair circumstances and corrupt officials. It's almost as if class struggle is the watchword this year. I wonder why that could be. Anyway, there's a slew of new features, including a day-night cycle with unique path actions for each character, and there's nice touches like battle cries directly addressing a character's story boss, or one character bigging up another after they land a critical hit. This sense of verisimilitude is something that the first game sorely lacked, and it makes the world feel significantly more alive. Finally embracing its own identity and brimming with confidence, Octopath 2 is a really great time, and although I'm nowhere near finishing it, I'm confident to include it on my list.
ParanormaSight.
One of 2023's biggest surprises, ParanormaSight is an adventure game from Square Enix of all publishers, set in Tokyo's suburban Sumida ward during the 1980s, where a handful of otherwise ordinary folks find themselves embroiled in a supernatural battle royale. An intricate, intersecting web of intrigue, suspicion, and grim determination, each of ParanormaSight's protagonists is vying for the opportunity to resurrect someone dear to them. But to do so, they must utilize a curse granted to them to snatch the lives of others. Based on the real folklore of the 7 Mysteries of Honjou, I'm really hesitant to say too much about ParanormaSight. It's best experienced knowing as little as possible going in, but I will say it's comparable to a morally gray take on classic adventure games along the lines of Famicom Detectives Club, with a heapin' helpin' of fourth wall breaking. If that sounds like it's up your alley, absolutely check it out. I really hope it did well, because I'd love to see Squeenix take some more chances on weird, smaller projects like this. Special shout out to the character designs, which I was surprised to see came from Kobayashi Gen of the World Ends With You fame. I especially like the thick, painterly brushstrokes that outline each character. They really put the sumi in Sumida. Kazutaka Kodaka's at it again with a worthy successor to Danganronpa,
Master Detective Archives Rain Code,
which manages to provide an outstanding follow-up while still preserving its predecessor's finality. Beset by endless rain, Kanai Ward is an autonomous isolationist zone closed off from the rest of the world by the massive Amaterasu Corporation. A neon-lit cyberpunk intrazone of Soviet futurism mixed with Kowloon-walled city, modern-day Tokyo, and London, Amaterasu rules Kanai Ward with an iron fist, their will enacted by their private security force. Unlikely named amnesiac Yuma Cocohead finds himself conscripted into the World Detective Organization, an underground group of superpowered investigators tasked with solving the city's many murders. But there's just one problem. Yuma is completely unremarkable, having no superpowers nor any detective skills to speak of. At least, so he thinks, until he learns he's been possessed by Shinigami, a marketable ghost mascot with the ability to transform into a bratty, tsundere, big sister, dominatrix, submissive, maid, magical girlfriend who teases him with lore. We're ticking a lot of somebody's boxes there. With the assistance of Shinigami, Yuma is able to dive into a mystery labyrinth, a psychedelic K-hole suspended over time and space that functions as a sort of mind palace for him to get the facts of each case in order. Although pervy as all get out, Rain Code is surprisingly thoughtful. Too often in procedural detective games do we see our investigator always justified and morally correct. Rain Code, like the best of the wider genre, questions Yuma's motives, asking one to consider if dogged pursuit of the truth should trump kindness and morals in a dystopia sorely lacking in both. But make no mistake, Rain Code, like Danganronpa before it, is tonally all over the place. You won't have long to ponder the big questions before Shinigami's even bigger boobs fill the screen. It is what it is, and one should come prepared with a high tolerance for anime bullshit. The moniker Master Detective Archives suggests this is the start of a new series, and I'd be thrilled to see more of these come out over the next few years. The story itself still manages to be very complete as is. Even the most disparate of the game's individual mysteries loop back around to a thrilling climax which absolutely sticks the landing. I plan to talk more about Rain Code in depth at some point, so more on this one later this year. World of Horror is finally out of early access, and it's even on console.
World of Horror.
Set in the fictional seaside town of Shiokawa in 1980X, supernatural incidents and bizarre cult activities make your home a darker place with each passing day. This quote-unquote one-bit Junji Ito-inspired roguelike horror has been a mainstay of mine for several years at this point. And version 1.0 has brought a slew of new content, from new unlockables to new mysteries, and development shows no sign of stopping anytime soon. Players choose their protagonist, alongside which eldritch being with whom they want to face off, before tackling 5 mysteries, many of which are based on classic urban legends like Akamanto or Kuchisake Onna. Some cases see you explore the city, and others send you into isolation into the wilderness, or confined within a single building, like Shiokawa's haunted hospital or horrific high school. Cases tend to end with difficult boss encounters, but these can regularly be avoided, as there's never just a single outcome to any individual case. Indeed, it would be foolhardy to challenge every single boss in a single playthrough, as your dwindling stamina and sanity sees the odds overwhelmingly stacked against you. Besides, the best horror stories don't always have the most perfect outcome for their heroes. One critique I do have is that World of Horror's endgame still feels slightly unfinished, but the same could be said of most Junji Ito story conclusions. It's about the journey, not the destination, and World of Horror is a hell of a journey that will suck you in again, and again.
And the nervous 2023 Game of the Year is Alan Wake 2.
Alan Wake 1 is a game that I really enjoyed, but ultimately wanted to like more than I did. My closest compadres were absolutely nuts about it, but me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of missed potential. Up until Control in 2019, Remedy's shtick always struck me as a little sweaty. Admirable attempts at genre deconstructions that never really rose above the freshman postmodernism 101 level. But I'm pleased to say that Alan Wake 2 is Remedy's doctoral thesis, the culmination of 20 years of honed craft into something truly brilliant. We got dual protagonists this time. FBI agent Saga Anderson, brought to Bright Falls to investigate a rash of ritualistic serial killings, and Alan Wake himself, warped back into reality after 13 long years in the dark place. Or is he? As the player swaps between Saga and Alan, we see an effective juxtaposition between the two. Saga's campaign first resembles a detective game that quickly gives way to the fact she's being guided by unseen forces, as her ostensible reality is encroached upon by the darkness of Alan's story. Alan, on the other hand, traverses the maelstrom of said darkness from within. It's spooky, surreal, and really playful, masterfully using mixed media to create a real one-of-a-kind atmosphere.
Share your copy with the goats. Seriously, stop feeding our goats copy. Seriously, it's not amusing.
I wish the verbs were slightly better. Control is a game I enjoyed a great deal, but regularly frustrated me with its fragile protagonist, tough encounters, and poor checkpointing. Alan Wake 2 still has all of these issues, but somehow with even worse checkpointing. I get that this is a survival horror game, and the odds are meant to be stacked against you, but I've died so many times to some cheap ambushes, and sometimes that send me back up to 45 minutes, erasing a lot of valuable clue collection and investigation progress. But the vibes are immaculate, and a little frustration was never enough to keep me away for too long. Alan Wake 2 is absolutely my game of the year, successfully bizarre while being unafraid to regularly make fun of itself. Let's talk about some things I like this year that are not games. It's been a hell of a year for comedy, and I feel #blessed that I had the opportunity to see a number of my favorite comedians perform live. Tim Heidecker came back to London for the first time since 2017, and he brought his very good band along for the Two Tims tour, a double bill of his abrasive, incompetent stand-up caricature, followed by a musical set, a mix of new and old stuff, replete with a few Yellow River Boys songs. Then, on my freaking birthday, we got to see Connor O'Malley perform his one-man show research and development comedy, scathing indictment of AI in the arts, followed by Patty Harrison's My Huge Tits, Huge Because They Are Infected, Not Fake, the following week, which you can maybe take by its title. In this house, we're also big fans of DJ Doug Pound, from all the way back to Tom Goes to the Mayor. But it was only this year that Justina and I discovered Pound House, the YouTube series he co-created with fellow comedian Brent Weinbach. Pound House sees Doug play a fictional, awkward version of himself, constantly menaced by his mysterious neighbor Brent, with help from his even more mysterious boyfriend, played by Johnny Pemberton. We must have watched the first 3 seasons dozens of times over the summer, and how serendipitous it was for our enthusiasm to coincide with the production of Pound House Season 4, made possible through crowdfunding. It's exactly what any Pound Pimple would want and more. Doug still can't catch a break as Brent returns to ruin his life, plus a vicious takedown of the LA art scene. At the time of recording, only 4 of the season's 6 episodes have been released, and each has been an uncomfortable delight. I don't like to throw around the term Lynchian too lightly, but Pound House is absolutely Lynchian, with fart jokes.
I was having fun at Nico Nico Mansion.
You can watch all of Pound House for free, link in the description. And this was also the year that we got into Joe Pera in a big way. As a slow-moving, sleepy, and out-of-touch Midwesterner, it's almost fitting that it took me this long. Joe Pera Talks with You is a wholesome show about appreciating the world around you and taking care of the people in your life, but it's crucially not a tendercore Pollyanna offering. it is as biting as it is sweet, encouraging us to take joy in the little things, even in the face of existential dread. While it's bittersweet that we came upon this one a year after its cancellation by Adult Swim, Pera's continuing to produce incredible stuff consistently, much of it quite generously available for free. You can watch his recent comedy special, Slow and Steady, on YouTube, and his monthly podcast, Drifting Off, is a Sunday night delight. Finally, there's Cole Escola, who Justynaaargh introduced me to this year. A real style icon, Escola produced a short fake pilot for a TV show called Our Home Out West, about an old-timey madam who takes in an orphan child at Christmas. Escola plays most of the parts in increasingly ridiculous costumes, with a who's who of alternative comedy filling in supporting roles, including Aidy Bryant, Connor O'Malley, Joe Firestone, and even Amy Sedaris. It's another bizarre treat available absolutely for free on YouTube. And that's been my year in games and media. I hope everybody had a good and restful winter holiday. I know it can be a fraught period at the best of times. So I hope you all spent it doing what you wanted to do alongside the people who matter the most to you, whether that be family or found family. Let's walk into 2024 together on our own terms. I think it's going to be a good year.
You know it's an election year, right?
Wait, what?
Both UK and US.